Alright, this is a 1950s Supro guitar amp that is just falling apart. So I decided to build a custom case in the steampunk vibe to house those old classic Supro components. So this is what we're building today. And a special thanks to K&S Precision Metals for sponsoring today's video. So let's get started on this build. At the lumberyard I found a board that has some really nice flowing grain and even has some purple stripes in it. And I think that purple stripe and that flow of the grain is going to really add to the mood of the piece. Let's cut her up. Alright, I want to keep the purple stripe on these guys, so I'm going to joint the edge with the purple stripe on it and then rip at the table saw this to its final width, and then we'll cut them to their final length and then get to work on the joinery. Alright, so I have a dovetail bit set up in the router table, and that is because our joinery method of choice for this project is going to be sliding dovetails. Alright, so I need to put another one on this side. So for safety, I always want to push this direction on the router. I don't want to ever go this way because it could catch and take off and ruin my workpiece, or bad things could happen. So I need to reset my setup here. But I made sure I cut all the ones that were in this orientation before changing my setup. All right, the dovetail bit's still in here. I didn't change the bit height. They left that exactly the same, but I brought my fence back here because now I need to make the tails to slide into our grooves. So I'm just gonna do a couple test fits and sneak up on the fit. So if it's too loose, I'll make a little adjustment. If it's too tight, I'll make a little adjustment until I get just the right fit. All right, so let's do a little bit of a test fit here. Sliding Now since the tail is cut on the full length of all of these, but they're all stopped dados, or stopped sliding dovetails, I need to cut the ends of the tail off. So I need to cut this little bit of the tail off so that way it slides all the way flush over this. Just making a notch with my chisel, eyeballing the width of the blade just to give my saw a good starting tracking point, because this edge is my show face, so I don't want to screw it up, so I'm being extra careful. There we go. Now this should slide right over the top. All right, we're going to do the same thing on all the other pieces. All right. Now I got all these guys trimmed off. So nice, so fit. No should be able. All right, there we go. There's the general shape. So on the side here, I need to find the center because we're going to draw or drill a hole for some decorative metal to be displayed in, our K&S metals. I got it laid out here, and I laid out top and bottom for my K&S metal bars, decorative bars to go through there. And I'm only laying out to the left because I'm going to set up a jig to where I can drill these guys and then turn it around and drill the other half, so that way it'll all stay symmetrical. Alright, this time I'm going to drill 4 holes, so that way these will all line up the same. Alright, so I have my K&S metal. How this is going to work is I'm going to have this aluminum rod, which will drop down through here. And then these guys will float in the middle between some bars that go back and forth across there. So I think it should look pretty sweet. So yeah, so this will slide into here to help keep these guys in place. All right, so next I need to cut a dado to go all the way around here, and that is going to allow me to drop in a panel to hold the speaker. All right, so since I have this offset here, I want to reference off the back to make sure my dado lands in the exact same spot. So I'm going to set the fence up here, the distance from the back of the piece to where I want the dado, and I'll run all these along the back. Alright, so this amp is kind of an oddball. Supro only made a few of these back in the early 50s, and it has an oval 6x10 speaker. So to really accent this weirdness, I decided I would do a segmented ring to highlight the coolness of the shape and the oval to really make the speaker pop. So I ended up having to cut a whole bunch of different segments at different angles with different lengths to achieve that oval shape. So if you're interested on my method of madness on how I went about figuring out the exact angles of each one of those pieces, I'll have a video available on my members side of the channel. All right, hopefully I can get this to line up on my mark here. All right, gently peel that off of there. All right, so I cut this guy out at the CNC machine, and then this is going to slip inside of here. All right. And then I have a round over bit in the router bit table because I just want to round over the inside. All right, so I need to make a custom mount to hold these tube connectors in so I can plug the tubes in and not have them wiggle all over the place. So I'm a little spoiled here because I have quite a selection of K&S metals, so I don't have to leave the shop. I can just come over here and decide which one I want. Like this guy's probably going to be too thick, this guy's definitely too thin, so this guy's just right. I never even have to leave the shop. So again, a special thanks to K&S Metals for sponsoring this video. We're getting into the metalworking portion, and this is hugely helpful just to have a huge assortment of stuff to work with and not have to leave the shop. And if I decide one's too small, I can just go and get the next size. All right, aluminum and copper machine a lot like wood does, so you can use your woodworking tools, but one thing to be aware of is you want to slow your speeds and feeds down a little bit, and also on real thin stock like this in the table saw, it could flop around and catch the blade. So I'm going to lower the blade down just to where it's sticking out and then make my cut. All right, so I want to machine this on the CNC machine, but I need a good way to hold it. So I'm going to try this spray adhesive and hope that holds it well enough for it to be machined, but still allow me to pry it off without ruining the piece when we're done. So if it doesn't work, we'll try something else. All right, a little acetone or something to clean that right up. But there is our mounting plate. All right, so the spray adhesive to glue these down while machining the CNC worked pretty well. I did run into a little bit of problem. I think as the material got hot from the machining process, it caused the glue bond to release. So a couple of the pieces, I'm gonna have some hand work to clean that up, but at the bench grinder, I don't think that's gonna be a big deal at all. I think that'll shape out really nicely. All right, I positioned my mounting plate where I want it to go, and then I'm just going to use its pattern and this Forstner bit as a transfer punch. All right, and then I'm going to drill through with a large enough hole that is going to allow all my rods to pass through to attach my copper plate. So I think this guy's going to work fine. All right, so I'm going to position this guy where I want it. I'm just going to pretty much do it by eye. I think we're pretty well dialed in there, so I'm just going to mark. All right, and I need to transfer these holes to the top, because to hold these guys in place, this rod's going to go all the way through here. So to get it lined up here, and just tape it together so it doesn't go anywhere. All right, I don't want to go all the way through the lid, so I'm just going to set my depth stop here. All right, to space these guys out, I have this tube and this solid rod. So that's how this is going to get spaced out on the amp. And to make sure all these guys are the same size, I've clamped a stop in my little jig here. And these are too small to cut with a power saw, any kind of power tool. So, all right, and now each one of these guys will be exactly the same length. So that way these guys will sit exactly the same height as I go up the speaker. All right, let's do some test fitting here. Of course, these guys are from K&S Metals. So now I'm working on fitting the copper into the circle. So I'm beveling the tube to fit the radius of the circle and just filing it over as I need to. So basically this is going to go in here just like this. All right, and once I cut it off, that guy should fit right in there. All right, so I got all of these guys cut in and just test fitted right now. They're not glued in yet. I left the pins long that are pinning these guys in place so that way I could pull them out, because if you've watched me any length of time, you know that I'm going to add some kind of decorative patina onto this copper. And of course these pieces as well. So the next step is to take it apart and get some chemicals applied to this to add some decorative color to it, as well as sand all these parts before I glue them together, because I think if I pre-finish this, it'll be a lot easier to finish in little parts than it will be once it's all put together. All right, let's see what we got here. All right, so we ended up with a really nice bright blue color. Now, of course, a lot of this is just the salt. So the finish isn't gonna stick to the salt, and the salt is gonna rub off the copper if we don't put a finish on it. So I'm gonna have to wash off the salt, which is gonna wash off a bunch of the blue, but hopefully we will end up with a really cool pattern underneath. I got some scrap plywood and I cut a sliding dovetail on it, so that way I could slide these guys up to stand up, so then when I spray, I can just spray all the way around and do both sides at once, and I'll tape off this top joint so I don't get any finish on there, so I'll still get a good glue bond. So I think I'm ready to finish now. So I got the finish sprayed on there. Gently tap these guys out and remove the tape. And we'll start getting some assembly going. All right, so I want the window to have a frosted back to it so it just kind of glows inside of there. So I'm just going to cut some plexiglass to size and then sand it to kind of give it that frosted glass to obscure it. All right, I got the finish on and it's looking pretty sweet. So now it is time to start installing the speaker and the electronics back into the amp. So I got my piece of aluminum that I machined earlier, And I've done my best to keep all this intact so I know where each wire goes. So I'm going to start out by unraveling all this mess and slowly attaching each one to the plate, and then we'll hopefully be able to get it all inside this amp box. So I'm not going to record all of it just because there's going to be a lot of just tedious fiddling and figuring things out, but you'll get the idea. All right, I know you guys are waiting to hear what this amp sounds like, but I have a bit of a confession to make. I don't actually play the guitar. However, my friend Greg does, and he is excited to hear what it sounds like. Greg has a Maker YouTube channel as well, and he also builds guitars. So I'll put a link to his channels below. And without further ado, we will get right to it. And here is a clip from Greg's garage. All right, Greg's from Greg's Garage. Thank you, Greg, for playing for us, and a special thanks to K&S Metals for sponsoring this video. Do look for their racks in your favorite hardware store. Have a great day.